everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on wherever you're joining us from. I'm Megha Chaudhary, Vice President, Global Head of Marketing and Alliance Management at C5I. Welcome again, and thank you for joining this fireside chat on empowering the people function through AI, from insights to timely decision making. This session will include insights into how leading organizations are building AI-ready people analytics ecosystems that support timely leadership decision-making. The discussion will also highlight the challenges and trade-offs involved in scaling analytics across regions and business segments. For those of us joining us for the very first time, a little bit about the host company. C5I is a pure play AI and analytics provider that combines the power of human perspective with AI technology to deliver trustworthy intelligence. The company drives value through a comprehensive solution set, integrating multifunctional teams that have technical and business domain expertise with a robust suite of products and accelerators tailored for various industry-specific use cases. At the core, C5I's focus is to deliver business impact at speed and scale by driving adoption of AI-assisted decision-making. Moving on to some housekeeping items. A recording will be available on our website for those who have registered, and we will have the last 15 minutes dedicated to Q&A. You can post your questions in the comments section. If they do not get answered during the live, send us your questions at scalewithgenai@c5i.ai. There's a specific tab at the bottom, which is Q&A. Please post your questions there. We have a time frame of 60 minutes, and we hope you will stay with us throughout the webinar. With this, let me introduce you to our speakers for the day. Meet Ujjwal Sehgal, Global Head of People Analytics at Mars. Ujjwal has over 20 years of experience in data science and machine learning, with a focus on customer-driven analytics and market research in the fields of consumer, sales, marketing, supply chain, R&D merchandising, risk and compliance, and human resources. He helps organizations drive business growth by leveraging advanced analytics and data science to empower and drive business decision-making. Welcome, Ujjwal. And we have Bill Jones, Strategic Client Director, Consumer Goods at Microsoft. Bill leads the global partnership between Mars and Microsoft. Bill and his teams at Microsoft believe technology is a powerful force for good work and to foster a sustainable future where everyone has access to the benefits and opportunities created by technology. Bill's expertise lies in empowering retail and CPG companies and team members to solve complex challenges and achieve more through innovative solutioning. And we have Nitesh Jain, Chief Executive Officer, C5I. Nitesh is responsible for running and scaling C5I's global business, go-to-market, and delivery. He leads the company in creating value through AI-based products and solutions while institutionalizing governance, nurturing talent, and managing operations. Nitesh has been at the forefront of building innovative AI solutions and demystifying data science for day-to-day decision-making and intelligent automation, driving sustainable business impact for customers and stakeholders alike. Hi, Ujjwal, Bill, and Nitesh. Welcome to this exciting fireside chat, and I'll pass it on to you to get this exciting session started.
Thank you, Megha. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, based on wherever you're joining from. And since Megha has already done the introduction, I will take the liberty to straight away jump into our discussion. Over the next 45 minutes or so, we will cover why and how people analytics became a strategic initiative at Mars, what's working, what are the learning along the way, and what's next, including how platforms like Microsoft Fabric, Azure AI, Copilot, and Power BI are enabling HR transformation at scale. So let's get started. Ujjwal, to set the context, I think it'll be good if we can start with bringing everyone on the same page on this term, P&O analytics at Mars. How does this differ from traditional HR reporting capability? How does this empower at Mars all the executives as a strategic decisioning tool, and why has this become such an important initiative at Mars?
It's a great question, Nitesh. A Yorker right away. So it's a tough one to answer. But if you really look at it, right, for us, it was really a combination of bringing urgency and maturity to play. Now, if you want to know a little bit about Mars, we really are, operating in a very competitive consumer market where there's constant adjustment that needs to happen, whether it's around new product introduction, change in demand or supply dynamics, or even evolving consumer and human needs that are there. Now, many times a lot of organizations start looking at change that can be really brought in through either technology or processes, but many times what people forget is all of this can only happen through people. And you need to understand the human element of things, and you also need to understand what the human and workforce risks and opportunities really are. Now, if you looked at traditionally HR or P&O, as we like to call it within Mars, it was always rear view mirror, line of sight. We were always looking backwards, what has happened. And at Mars, the need was how do we get forward looking? It's no more about the rear view, but how do we get the predictive signals? How do we really do scenario planning? How can we actually make recommendations that are truly actionable and are more forward looking rather than looking back in time, right? So when we started looking at all of this, we also suddenly started realizing that complexity is not very simple because, again, we have multiple segments. We operate in multiple, geographies, and that complexity constantly keeps growing as well, right? So with all of these multiple operating models, diverse talents needs, geographies, everything, there was a lot of human intuition initially that was taking place, right? So everybody was really trying to just understand how they operated, but it wasn't really common. And that's really where people analytics became the strategic partner that looks at the data in a cohesive and a uniform manner. And then that is helping our leaders make better decisions faster with the confidence that, what they're seeing is true. And that helps them make that decision. So what we really did is we got the people at the center of every decision while this organization that is constantly evolving with the dynamics kept changing as well. So that's just a little bit about how P&O analytics has evolved here at Mars.
Funny, just a little bit, and even in that little bit, you really expressed a large body of work that had to be accomplished. And I guess having been on this journey with you, I hope to be able to add a little bit to that, because Ujjwal, you described it exactly, that kind of inflection point that we see and that Mars was at, right? So as business leaders, like when do we stop asking what happened in the rear view and start asking what's going to happen in the future as we look ahead, right? Being more predictive, being more prescriptive. That's really hard work. But that's when your function or that people analytics as a practice, right, shifts from just reporting and business intelligence to actually decision intelligence. But man, that requires a lot of things. In particular, right, sound, actionable, trusted, reliable, available data, right? Data is just like people are the lifeblood of our organizations. Data is the lifeblood of our decision making. So, one reason we felt very bullish that we could help through this process is Microsoft, we've been on our own journey. Our kind of North Star when it comes to people analytics is a concept called thriving. And really that means that the work we do is meaningful, that all associates like feel empowered to excel and do well within our jobs, and that we get energy and draw inspiration from the work that we do. Um, all sounds great, but again, without data, without that foundation, how do you measure? How do you manage? How do you improve there? And so we've gone through a long 20-year journey of implementing practices and procedures, including things like robust listening systems and scaled analytics infrastructure and tools so that we can serve the right insights to the right people in the right way, do it easily, effectively. But most importantly, it was the collaboration and continued rigor between our HR function and the business units that they support. And that collaboration led to a very intentional, installation of this, the processes, procedures, and tooling that we put in place. The 20-year journey has seen phenomenal results, but it started with North Star intention and rigor around it. So, and now fast forward to today. If we hadn't done what we had done then, we would not have been ready as a company to take advantage of this wave of AI, because you need good data to do that. So, to be honest, at the end of the day, now with where we are, like, AI can only become relevant when the intent is there, and that intent started 20 years ago. Otherwise, what? We're just experimenting and playing around with things that can't scale or lead to adoption. So thank you for being on the journey with us. We're thrilled to be your partner in that regard. And Nitesh, thank you and team as well as helping enable that journey, right? Because without
No, no, absolutely. And Bill and Ujjwal, both of you, I think you made a very, very strong point. I mean, it's so heartening to see, that there are organizations like Mars and Microsoft, which is taking people asset as seriously as they take some of the other strategic functions like marketing or sales or supply chain and operations, right? What I often see is once leaders start treating human capital as the most important strategic asset, right? The same way they treat revenue or market share or supply chain, etc. Then people analytics is not optional. We ourselves, obviously being a services and solutions organization, where our human capital is the most important asset we have. And we need to look at them strategically in terms of quality of talent onboarding, personalized talent grooming, empowering them, equipping them with the right tools and training for them, and for us to be successful in this, like you said, Bill, in the rapidly evolving AI era, right? And all of these obviously need strong P&O analytics and insights to ensure that we stay true to this mission. But based on what I heard, I mean, one practical question that comes to mind, Ujjwal, what signals tell an organization it's ready to move from, the typical HR reporting to AI-driven people analytics, right? From our perspective, there are three signals. One, leadership starts demanding foresight and not just dashboards. Two, the organization acknowledges that data fragmentation is holding them back and is ready to invest in that foundation. And three, P&O as a function starts showing up as a strategic partner and not just as a service function. Does this align to what you saw inside Mars, or any other point of view that you would like to share?
No, I think exactly all three, clearly resonate. I'll just add a fourth, which is typically, and again, I don't know if this is how other organizations see it, but at least from our perspective, it was something that really came out was the willingness and the desire to standardize. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So, people analytics as a function is fairly new, and, everybody has their own ways of working and their own definition. Like when I came into role, we had 7 different definitions to call headcount as a very simple example. Or, you start looking at turnover or attrition, everybody looks at it very differently. Some of it is regrettable, non-regrettable, but if someone moves to a different team, is that considered attrition? So everybody had their own different definitions of attrition. And then it came down to even performance, or, how do you even identify high potentials or critical roles, right? So everybody had their own definition, which was very confusing because you weren't able to give a cohesive enterprise-wide story because everybody had their own version of truth. So, just making sure that the standardization and then scaling that through, all the AI and the analytics becomes very, very important. So that fourth additional thing is, the ability and the method to standardize becomes very important for this to be successful.
Absolutely. I think very, very valid point, willingness to standardize. Otherwise, such a large organization, you can have very, very fragmented, points of views and how people make decisions. So now let's move from the why to most important question that business typically ends up asking. So what, right? And in this age of where we have no dearth of data is everywhere. We seek insights, inference, and actionable intelligence, and not just another data trivia, because there are many, many data trivias, right? So from Ujjwal, from your perspective, what actually worked across the associate life cycle? What are some of the use cases, that you have created along with your partners that basically have given the strongest measurable value backed by actionable intelligence that made P&O such a strategic, P&O analytics such a strategic asset for Mars.
I can go on for the whole day and it still won't be enough. So maybe I'll just pick maybe a couple of use cases if that's all right, just to hopefully give a perspective of where we are. So, the first one, which I'm sure almost every organization deals with, is turnover or retention, right? And early on, at least, when this function got started, a lot of it was post fact. People were getting visibility to turnover only after the fact, which was, as I mentioned, the rear view, which wasn't really helpful. A lot of the business partners were struggling around, how can I get to know this well in advance, or at least if we need to do any kind of mitigation, we can actually bring in, interventions. That's really where the people analytics team brought that shift, where we brought this proactive predictive model that helps identifying where the hotspots are for potential turnover, and then what are those drivers behind them. It's really not just about pointing here's the hotspot, but why are people leaving is also equally important, because that helps us to clearly then have a meaningful conversation with those associates to see if we can mitigate their concerns, and that can only be provided through the drivers as such, right? Now, with this, we were able to actually bring down our turnover by half, purely just because we were knowing well in advance where, associates are at higher risk of leaving, and then the mitigation strategies kick in, right? So that's just one simple example. I'll pick another one, which is really around, a lot of around the workforce planning and capability, right? This is where we really need to bring in the true power of analytics and AI, where, we start looking at, what are the right level of people, the right skills that are needed, and then if there is any kind of redeployment that needs to happen, we can actually look at that. Or if we really need to bring in specific hiring, elements to it, that's really where, the whole workforce planning capability kicks in. From a P&O perspective, earlier on, we always were looking at the 6B analysis. It's really around, your build, borrow, buy, boost, bounce, and bind. We brought in a seventh one, which is, with the advent of AI now, it is also about bot. What can you actually automate through a bot and enable that, right? So now all of that becomes a part of workforce planning for us, which is again something that we are enabling our business partners and our stakeholders to actually truly see through the power of analytics the decision making that they can actually drive.
Awesome. Bill, if you want to share your perspective as well.
Yeah, just reflecting for a moment on that 50% reduction or retention metric. I mean, it's an incredible outcome, an incredible result. And we all know the cost of, having to go out and hire versus retain. So the value, calculation there, one, is easy to get to, but two, at a company of Mars' size and scale, becomes substantial. So what I really appreciate, and where we're very proud of the work that we've helped to deliver, is that those are leadership grade outcomes, right? We're actually delivering back to the business quantifiable, legitimate impact. And it really, speaks to the shift in thinking overall. Just people need to be invested in those processes, and the intelligence there will drive business, especially as we shift from, different workforce generations who have different needs. Anyway, so I love that you all are looking at, P&O metrics, not in isolation. These are enterprise decisions. The retention risk, it's not just an HR statistic, right? It has productivity and continuity implications. You're very smart about how you've gone about this, and clearly the results are showing as a result. People at Microsoft and everywhere, they're the most valuable asset. They carry the people decisions we make carry huge opportunity costs. So, but come back to, it's about good data. It's about having a good analytics function that can serve the right data to the right people at the right time to make those sound decisions, make the right investments in people and conversations, and obviously deliver the right outcomes. You guys are doing an awesome job, and just thanks for being part of the journey with us. Awesome.
Exactly, Bill. I agree with you. Ujjwal talks about this 7B model, very unique. I hope our audience is taking note of that, in terms of what those 7Bs are. And for us, as partners, the focus has always been how do we convert insight into a leadership action, and not just here's the model, but actually being able to say here's the decision pathway, right? Yesterday, I was talking to one of the other customers, and then Ujjwal, to your point, when you talked about the entire workforce planning and then how you look at it, it was interesting to hear their perspectives. It's a large organization where within the data analytics and AI function, they are saying that they triangulate. I mean, one side, obviously, they keep their current skill mix and capability mix. They marry it with the portfolio of demand for the future and say whether the mix is right or not. But at the same time, they also try and compare whether the data and AI skills are in line with what industry is projecting as the future workforce, optimal structure, and then see if there's a gap. That means either we are not sensing demand properly and our business is not able to articulate because our skill mix doesn't look like what should be the future skill mix. Very interesting way of looking at things, in terms of how people look at it. But as I said, impact is all that matters. So, Ujjwal, if I may, one thing that I have truly admired through our partnership at Mars is the discipline around the impact measurement, right? I mean, you rarely let analytics remain in theory. You push for outcomes, so would welcome your thought on that.
Thank you. And that's very true. When we started this journey, it was really about build me X, build me Y without a clear understanding or, a need for why and how you're actually going to use that, right? And we've changed that narrative. When we came in, we really wanted to understand how is, and any kind of analytical output that is being created by us as a team, how is that actually going to be used? And we've clearly learned that if you can't quantify the impact or you can't really implement an insight or an output, then your program's unfortunately going to fail. No matter what you try and do, you might get great insights, but if I can't implement it, it's of no value, right? It's a wonderful shiny car that's sitting in my garage that I can never drive. So that's why we really need to drive that from a quantification standpoint. What we also saw was that when leadership starts seeing a lot of these measurable outputs or this movement, right? Whether it's if you look at it from a regrettable loss standpoint or turnover standpoint, or how we are able to actually, fill internal roles quickly, that's really when, the whole organization starts leaning in. And that's really where, the momentum builds. It's no more about, only certain people who are sitting in certain roles are able to actually see it. At the ground level, the business partners clearly see the value and how they can actually start using that within regions, within markets, and that really is where that momentum starts picking up. So that's really what we've tried to drive here at Mars, and we've seen a fair share of success in that.
No, absolutely. So, Ujjwal, I mean, I want to zoom in on this one, right? Because so far we discussed the why and so what, and sometimes initiatives like this take off, become a huge success at department level or a geography level. But the hard part always is scaling things at enterprise level. And then we're talking about Mars, which is a huge, diverse global organization, right? So scaling it at that level, that really counts, right? Doing people analytics in one region is one thing, but doing it across Mars is another, with multiple businesses, geographies, continuous acquisitions, and so on and so forth, right? So please share with us what were the biggest enabler and what were the hardest challenges while doing so in scaling consistently.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you're right. Scale is your true test, right? Again, you could do wonderful MVPs and small pilots that are very, very controlled from a user perspective, but that really is not where the enterprise gets value out of it, right? Your biggest enabler, obviously, to start off with, is getting the right level of sponsorship and clarity of the purpose of what you're trying to do. Again, this takes a lot of time, many times, and initially when these kind of conversations started, it was very tough for for our business users to really lean in and say, what are you really trying to just build this analysis for me. There was a lot of difficulty in terms of changing that behavior. But once people got used to that style of working and that nature of working, it started working as a very well-oiled engine, if from a people analytics standpoint. So that was really one of the biggest things that we clearly saw, right? And then let's not forget, right? You got to not only do this at scale, but you got to do this in a consistent manner without making any errors or losing relevance, because again your business dynamics are constantly going to change as well, and you got to keep adapting as well, because that's really how your data is also going to start moving as well. So those are things that you have to then start thinking. But at the same time, you also have to bring in the regional dimensions to play, and then even the segment, at least from a Mars standpoint, because we have a diverse set of segments that have very different business operating models, and bringing governance around that can actually be very different. So the mantra that we've used as a team really has been, we are a global team, but we deal with local realities, because that's really where the rubber hits the road, and it becomes very important, where it's really contextualized, but it's been done in a in a standard manner that everybody else at Mars follows. So that's really been our enabler here. And then last but not least, if I may, right, trust. People got to trust the data, and people got to trust the interpretation of the insight that is coming out of it, because without that, there's always going to be, should I believe what I'm seeing? Can I take the right decision? So building that trust also takes a long time. So that becomes very important, whether it's on any dimension, whether you're talking about performance, whether you're talking about comp and band, whether you're talking about turnover, or even workforce planning. All of this requires that ability for people to trust what they're seeing, and can clearly follow the insights that's being generated out of it.
Sure, sure. Bill, I know you are itching to go on, but just one, I think there's a very interesting question that has come from from an audience. Ujjwal, I'm going to put you on a spot here. It's a difficult one. You may have to bring your Middle East, experience of rollout and challenges to life. This is a question from Muhammad Omar, and he is from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. His query is, how can AI in people function align with Saudi Vision 2030, where MBS is obviously trying to make sure there's a lot more urbanized Saudi Arabia and a lot more private sector coming in, tourism gets boosted, and so on and so forth, while maintaining workforce sustainability. And what practical AI use cases are delivering quick wins, for people functions. And there's another question in terms of what defines success, for AI in people function. So, Bill and Ujjwal, from your Middle East experience, anything you want to share?
I can take a stab at it, and Bill, please add. I'd love to hear your perspective as well, right? So, firstly, thanks for that question. See, if you really look at the entire, and this is how we've approached it, if you really look at the entire associate journey, right, all the way from what we call pre-hire to retire and win back, AI can actually be an enabler across any of these, or across the entire ecosystem as such as well. When you start looking at pointed solutions, and I'm just going to look at if you start building pointed solutions, a lot of organizations are trying to just build one single pointed AI solution, whether it's really around talent acquisition or it's really around retention. That's really where there are many use cases that you can bring to life. There are a couple of things that we've done where we've got Gen AI and AI capability, where we are looking at even the most basic layer, which is around data and bringing data quality. I spoke about data trust and trust in data, right? And one of the things that we've been leading here at Mars is, how can you actually bring the AI and Gen AI capability to improve the quality of your data and that entire ecosystem, which then brings trust into every decision that we make based on that insight and output of that data as well, right? So that's just an example. But many times people are like, okay, what are you doing from a data quality standpoint, and how are you bringing AI to bear? And a lot of that is where we are able to actually give our business partners and our users clear insight into what is the problem that we are seeing in the data, and here's the fix and what value it adds to you as a user from two aspects: time saving, and then any potential cost that you're able to save because of that. Now, in sometimes it's human time saving cost that's there, but it could also purely be even cost unlock that happens because of a change that you brought in through AI. So again, if you really look at that entire landscape, AI can actually touch across every aspect of the associate life cycle. We are working on various use cases across the associate life journey. I just use data quality as just one example.
Mm.
Anything from you? Yeah.
No, I appreciate your reflections, and also very smart move to take a question from the audience and give Ujwal more time to share his expertise and experience. Way more valuable to the audience than hearing more from me. But thank you for, on the spot, reflecting so meaningfully on that question. Because I would, first of all, agree on the AI front, right? It has the ability to drive value and have interactions across that employee life cycle. But picking, the right processes and inserting technology appropriately into the right processes can help bring that value, as opposed to just peanut buttering it everywhere and hoping that it's going to work, right? So ultimately the technology kind of has to support your operating model at that point, and that cohesion there. But then when you look across regions, it becomes more complex. And that's where, at least from our perspective, we believe that the number of regions that we run in Azure and the data sovereignty and the customer data sovereignty that we provide helps with that. One, staying within the regulatory restrictions and requirements that are needed. We're talking people data. This is highly sensitive, right? Needs to be protected. So, we, by following role-based access and some of those things, one, we believe that we can keep this data governed and protected in the way that it should be, but then allow the technology to bring value in an appropriate, responsible, and ultimately, legal way, right? And so, and that's why I think we've been so successful, not only in our own practice at Microsoft, but in helping customers as well. Because you need to have some unification to that platform and foundation, and governance around the data and the practices. And so, we don't just sell those products or sell those ideas. The reason we can be so kind of front-footed about it is our own people analytics team and our HR business intelligence function is customer zero for emerging technologies. So we're eating our own dog food when it comes to having unified data estates and leveraging AI in a responsible way, but also doing all these things so that you're not just duplicating data all across the board, and the cost to serve skyrockets because it's inefficient and the technology isn't architected and implemented appropriately. So, Fabric and emerging technology, we use that in-house as well. Purview from a governance and security perspective, we use that in-house as well. Lakehouse architectures, etc. So, again, that's where we feel if your foundation is strong, your processes and data are aligned, like you can scale these use cases without rebuilding everything, re-architecting everything, or duplicating things across the board, so that, again, cost to serve is just untenable, right? You're not solving anything at that point. You're only making the problem worse.
That's such a key point, Bill, scaling use cases without rebuilding the plumbing, right? And honestly, I think in our journey together, three of us, Mars has shaped our thinking as well, right? We've learned that scaling requires three things at once, right? We need to have a very strong business aligned roadmap, adoption engine, and a governance platform or governed platform, right? If any of them is missing, scaling becomes fragile, right? And that's what we've seen. But Ujjwal, from your perspective, if you want to share your thoughts.
From our perspective, I think I'll add a fourth, if I may, right? And that is really having the right partnership. That matters as well. Because again, scaling isn't just a solo journey or a one-person journey, right? We really need, at least from a Mars standpoint, we really need strong partners, whether it is with Microsoft from a platform perspective, or it is from C5I, where the consulting prowess comes to life in terms of how are you translating the data, how are you bringing in the data science capability, how are you really trying to bring the change management, because again, let's not forget that's your last mile delivery is, how do you enable the decision making and the adoption and the last mile delivery. That is equally important, and all of that requires that partnership muscle that needs to come in, because we can't do this alone. And that's just the reality of our world today, and that's really that is the
Sure. No. I definitely want to, pick on this one and probably have a dialogue with Bill as well. But I think there's another interesting question that has come in. It's anonymous, but I think because Ujjwal, you
Ooh.
spoke a lot about standardization and scaling, right? So the question is, Ujjwal, as you said, people analytics is fairly new and standardization is important. So when scaling people analytics across regions, functions, and business units, how do you suggest to balance global consistency while still allowing for local context without impacting decision quality? I think it's a good question. So please.
Yeah, I think again we won't have enough time to cover all of the things that is being asked under this question. So I think you're right, right? Again, if you start looking at and sorry, I'm just going to take another example where if you start looking at turnover, and again, we try and say that turnover could really be very, very standard in terms of the metrics or the drivers that could be driving turnover. But that's unfortunately not always true when you start looking at markets and behaviors of certain markets. Again, if you start even just looking at your attrition curves, for example, you might say X percentage in the US is considered high, but 2x in another region in Asia might be normal, right? So again, that is where you start bringing in a lot of that contextualization of not just using one standard rule that or one size fits all for dealing with attrition, but you're actually looking at it at a regional country market level, so that you are actually able to give pointed solutions specific for that market. It's not a one size fits all. And that's really where you start off with, right? You could start off with the global view and start looking at, am I able to capture, say, 80, 60, 80% of my whole operating model, and then where are the gaps in the remaining 40 to 20%, which really is where you then start seeing it's the local issues, the country specific issues or the region issues that come in, and then you start tweaking your strategy or you start tweaking your analysis purely based on bringing that local contextualization to play so that you can enhance what's being done. And then it really just becomes a sort of like a hierarchical decision. If you're trying to solve for attrition, if it's for the US, follow this model. If it's for a country in Asia Pac, then you follow this model, and that just becomes a natural waterfall that you can then implement, and that really drives to that adoption as well, because you brought in the contextualization, and the adoption naturally drives it.
Sure, sure. I mean, to basically make it truly global, right? I mean, global yet have that flexibility of being local. And I think technology, the foundation on which you've built the entire capability also provides an opportunity, if you will, for that kind of flexibility. So, Bill, maybe from the previous topic as well as building on this topic, walk us through how your technology stack, Power BI, Azure AI, Copilot, Fabric, there's new innovation every day. How do they work together in this story? Not as separate tools, but one ecosystem supporting this entire initiative and at the same time providing both global and local, capability, if you will, from a configuration standpoint.
I appreciate that question because while I don't want to turn this into a commercial for Microsoft, this is all about C5 and Mars. I think there is some relevant. How do we bring that in? So, and I'm not a deep technologist. So let me try my best to simplify the answer and explain it. Let's think back to that kind of data foundation or backbone, right? A solution like Fabric, right, can help with the ingestion, the engineering, the lakehouse storage, right? And what's really important there is the semantic modeling, right? So that your business language and business context is understood by that foundational layer so that when you bring in something like Power BI, where you're going to serve up those insights and serve up the analysis, right? It's all contextualized in a relevant way, either from a global perspective or back to that delivering local. If there's a certain KPI, a certain metric, a certain something in a local market, right? We can bring that global foundation, global platform, but deliver the local insights that are required to drive, that market, that brand, whatever it might be. And so, you combine Fabric and Power BI, add some really powerful capabilities from the core all the way to that end user experience. And then when you layer in, the robust capabilities of Azure, or even just specifically our AI capabilities within Azure, you can drive advanced analytics, predictive modeling, right? And it's all done within a cohesive infrastructure. My layman's way of putting it's all in the Microsoft bathtub, right? So it's all there, it's all connected, it's all fluid. And again, you don't have to have these like siloed data structures and circumstances. Now bring in Copilot, the generative AI, the agentic capabilities, all that foundation we just discussed, bring that additional, technology on top of it, and it knows your business relevant context, right? It has the governance in place, it has the security in place, it has access to everything so that it can serve up the right insight to the right person with the right role-based access, right within the flow of work. So you're driving both personal productivity at that point, but as well as team efficiency and ultimately organizational or enterprise productivity. So that stack should bring a middle out efficiency and just overall personal, team, and an enterprise productivity. So analytics at that point don't just become like a once a month, I'm going to go look at this dashboard, get my information and roll off. It becomes a consistent thing you interact with. You can speak to your data because, again, foundationally, it's all structured and governed and set up in a way because the Microsoft stack and platform enables that capability, again, from a middle out perspective. So that's my 2 cents. I hope that makes sense to the audience.
Absolutely. I think you touched upon a very important piece, governance and then how that can drive meaningful adoption. And Ujjwal, I do want to probably pick your brain on this, but in the same context, I think there's an interesting question that has come in, which is very much linking to this. It says, many organizations generate strong people analytics insights, but struggle to see consistent action from leaders. In your experience, what has been the most critical success factor in ensuring analytics actually changes decisions and behaviors at the leadership level?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and typically it's no more about, or typically if you work in the people analytics space, it's all about build me my next dashboard, right? That's typically how people have approached it, without clearly coming in with what is my business ask, what am I really trying to solve for, and that leads to that whole adoption barrier because many times we as humans, and this is human behavior, right? We as humans are always in the problem solving mode rather than the, what is my problem mode. And there's a fantastic quote. Sorry, I have to quote this. I always keep quoting this. There's a fantastic quote from Albert Einstein that said, if I had 60 minutes to save the world, I would spend the first 55 minutes to define the problem. And I think as humans we don't tend to do that, right? And that's why your adoption barrier rises because many times when I ask for that as a problem, or I ask for a dashboard to be created, etc., it was a burning need, but it takes time for you to understand the problem, build a solution, make it live. By that time, the business has moved. So that could also be a reason why your adoption fails many times as well. The other bit is you might have a pointed solution that's sitting there, but the user themselves are not even aware of it. So that's the third thing, which is the education of what's already available within your ecosystem and how you can actually repurpose some of that for answering specific questions that the end user doesn't even know how to apply that with the solution that you have. So again, I think there's no silver bullet to it, honestly, but there are these issues that typically arise. Problem formulation is a big problem. The business problem has shifted because by the time you meet the need and you deliver an output, time has evolved and the problems shifted as well. Or the third is people don't even know where to look, right? And that just leads to that whole gap in terms of adoption that's there.
Absolutely. I mean, Ujjwal, in so simple words, you kind of, gave the reason as to why things fail, and then your valuable suggestion. Don't jump into technology solutions. Spend enough time in understanding and formulating the problem statement, right? And that's where then the real value of technology or AI shows up, not as a shining capability, but as a compressed, truly important decision tool, and hopefully better action quality, if you will, right? So while we are at it, let's also try and take the bull by the horn. Leaders worry about the most, right? Scaling AI is as much about people as technology. We have seen many AI initiatives that fail, like you said, due to either wrong problem formulation, not spending enough time into understanding what business needs. At the same time, also due to lack of trust and adoption across in our customers. But P&O has been a very different story at Mars. So, across your journey, what were the biggest watchouts? Data readiness, bias, adoption fatigue, and how did you handle them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, right? And I heard I was talking to someone earlier this week, and they mentioned that AI programs fail not because of technology, but because of people, and it's so true, right? It is really around where people are either expecting AI to solve everything, and they come with that kind of a mindset, and when they see it's built for a very pointed problem to be solved, they get a little disheartened, and then adoption goes down, right? So that's just one simple example that we've seen. But to bring what your question really was, I think it's really around trust. And I love what Bill said, right? Is especially when you start looking at HR or P&O, you got to be very, very careful around protecting the data that is being presented and how much can you actually present through that capability, because you got to make sure you're not infringing on any kind of data privacy. You're not disclosing any details that you shouldn't. So how do you bring in that layer of how much is good enough for you to take decision without disclosing too much from a PII perspective? That is very, very important. From a P&O standpoint or within Mars, we really focused on what I would say is transparency, where we were very clear in terms of here's our definition, here's the assumptions that we are using, and here's what the analytics can and cannot do. So we clearly went in and laid that down. But again, we learned that a little bit from some past experiences. And I have to share this. It's a true funny incident where we had initially started building a chatbot, and it was really around helping answer HR or P&O related questions. And then people were coming in and asking the chatbot, "What's the weather tomorrow?" Obviously, the chatbot's unfortunately going to fail, right? But that's the reality of how the user behavior unfortunately shifts also, which is where the training and making sure that the users clearly understand is that this is what this solution is going to give you. It's not going to be all end all and provide you everything. But there's also another thing that we've seen, and sorry, if I'm taking a little bit more, just one more thing that I would like to add is, and that's the reality also, is that the adoption fatigue is also real. you have so many tools, you have so many things, there's so much technology that's available. Where do I go? How much do I go? Where do I get all of this information? It's becoming too much, and it's leading to a lot of that user adoption fatigue that's there. And that's why what we've tried to do is we've tried to embed the analytics into every workflow that we have. So, it's no more about I have to go to X place or Y place to get an insight. Now, all of that is actually available as I operate or as I go through, my day. So, some of those have become also very, very real in terms of showing the value of where AI can, add value, where it gets embedded into your workflow rather than here's a shiny tool that I have, go ask it any question and it'll be able to give you that answer, because that just leads to failure rather than, success.
It's a
Great.
great point. I'll try to keep a little ad, very short, but we've talked multiple times now about HR data requiring, the strict governance standards. And so while we do want to provide some of the capabilities to customers like human in the loop and things so that you can, have the proper controls and things in place, we also just build right into the platform, right? Governance and security, role-based access, right? Taking bias and bringing all those responsible principles into play because one, we want to make it easy for our customers to implement and deploy back to that simplicity side, but also then provide capabilities as well to ensure that things are adhered to, that there's telemetry, that there's analytics and reporting, et cetera. Because look, model design is certainly part of it, how you implement or what you do, but it's the operational controls that really ensure that the trust and transparency, back to what you originally mentioned, Ujwal, are there. Because if it's not trusted and it's not transparent, and especially if it's HR data, it's not going to happen, right?
Absolutely, Bill. And then even from our perspective, I think we work very closely with Ujjwal and team and other clients as well. Where we operationalize trust through obviously privacy by design, governance framework, bias mitigation testing, and model explainability. I think that transparency is critical at the same time, obviously change management, right? And to Ujjwal's point, when he talked about adoption fatigue, to the previous question that somebody was asking, how do you make sure that the leadership change actually happens? Embedding into workflow, making it way of life for them. I think you beautifully answered that question as well, Ujjwal. If leaders don't know how to act on insights, analytics becomes noise for sure. There's another phrase that I've heard, and I'm pretty sure all of you as well, we hear everywhere, that HR needs to become AI translators. Sounds good, but what does it really mean in practice, Ujjwal?
Yeah, so yeah, I think we've heard this phrase way too often now. It's just become folklore as such, right? But for us, at least from a Mars perspective, when we start looking at what an AI translator really is we look at it from certain capability standpoint. They're able to bring in the business context, right? Where they clearly understand what are we doing, why are we doing it, what's the area we're trying to solve for. They also understand, the analytical capability, or what's the art of the possible? How much can I achieve through this, right? Because again, every business problem you might not be able to solve that through data analytics or AI also, right? So you also need to understand that, what's possible and what's not possible. And then the third bit, which is also equally important when you talk about the AI translator as such, right, is to be knowledgeable enough to work with your true data science, AI science, AI analysts, etc., to bring the solution to life. But then how do I interpret that from a science or AI perspective to translate it into a business understanding? I think that is really where that whole AI translator concept, really comes to life. For me, the AI translator is really a bridge between my business user and my data science team or my AI team, right? And they really play that interconnectivity between those two ends of the spectrum. Now, many people also confuse that, do these translators really need to how to code? Should they really be, programmers? Well, answer is not really. that you need to be a programmer or you really need to know how to code. What in our parlance AI translator needs to be is they're able to ask the right questions. They're able to understand, as I said, the limitations, the art of the possible, and then how do I take the insights and provide that from from an end user perspective so that it can be acted on. That's really where the AI translator kicks in. Now, again, a lot of people have also asked is how do I become an AI translator? Is there a natural progression or, is there anything I need to do? And again, obviously you need to understand your business. That without that, there's really not much you can do, right? But what we've also tried to build here within Mars is through our learning academy, we brought in a lot of the data literacy programs, where we are able to walk them through, structured problem solving, structured thinking. How do you look at data and how do you actually then interpret data from a P&O or HR perspective and then provide that as an insight. So we built, and these are very custom learning programs that we built here at Mars that really helps drive a lot of that so that our business partners are becoming more AI savvy and analytics savvy, and they're really using the power of data for just their own decision making. So that's a little bit of how AI translators have sort of evolved here at Mars.
Sure. Great.
No, it's a good call out, right? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Bill, please. Yeah.
Because translation does matter, right? Because even tools like Copilot are great. Being conversational with your data and platforms, wonderful. But how do you translate insights into actions, right? Incorporating the domain-specific expertise around culture and fairness and priorities. It's hard. Tools don't just get implemented and work. There is, the literacy that's needed, the training, the enablement, and we probably invest as much in that training and enablement for customers and understanding what you can do, how it works, and rather than just helping with implementation, right? It's back to that 55-5, right? Spend as much time planning, training, enabling, then the execution, can be much shorter. So.
Thank you, Bill. Ujjwal, I know actually in the interest of time, because we only have a minute left, you answered two questions naturally in the flow that you just now spoke about in terms of how do you accelerate people decision making responsibly and how not to make it a black box. So I may have to go into rapid fire mode right now because I just want to cover one more topic, take both of your point of view in last 1 minute, which is obviously the road forward or road ahead, if you will, right? So Ujjwal, what or which analytical capabilities will be most critical to maximizing return on human capital investment? If you want to share your perspective on that, please.
Okay, from a HR standpoint, I think the next frontier obviously is, it's no more about building analytics products or dashboards, etc., but moving into more decision-based ecosystems that really allow you to do scenario planning, sensing, dynamic workforce changes, bringing in the right interventions, and then also, and I think, one of the biggest things, Nitesh, you touched upon, earlier in the conversation was how do I be ready 5 years from now? What does the future really hold? And I think there's a lot of thinking that's going around, which is how do I do what is called strategic workforce planning, which is what's the skills of the future and how do I plan to actually meet that, and is there any ready now workforce that can actually be trained with the gaps that are existing there to actually move to that future state that is there. So I think that's really where that shift is going to come in, where people really need to be more dynamic, start scenario planning, and bring in the right interventions at the right time.
Sure. Bill, final comment, 20 seconds from you, please.
Oh man, I can't do anything in 20 seconds other than to say thank you for, again, being part of this journey with us. There's more ahead than there is behind us. So we're super excited for where we go. And as technology continues to emerge, as our partnership continues to grow and to gel, I look forward to the next round of this fireside chat where we talk about the next evolution of what we do. So thank you for being part of it. Thanks for the invitation.
Very well said, Bill. Very well said. It has truly been a joint journey. business, analytics, platform, and the story is still being written, if I may say so, right? It's a journey. We need to obviously continuously challenge the status quo, bring proactive ideas in front of our business teams, ideate with them, listen to them, and then create solutions that matter. But this has been a phenomenal conversation. And as we often hear, leadership is an action, not a position. A leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And you would have witnessed that today with what we heard from Ujjwal and Bill at Mars and Microsoft respectively. Thank you, Ujjwal. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It has been a great conversation.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.